Hey guys, welcome, and we are in for another manga video. And today I'm going to talk to you guys about my favorite manga arcs of all time. So I'm going to narrow it down to 10. However, there's quite a bit, and so I really struggled with making this video. If some of your favorite manga arcs are not on this video, then please put it in the comments. I would love to hear from you. But at number 10, we have the wrestling arc in the manga Real. Now, this is a controversial one because the manga Real is about wheelchair basketball. And yet, there is a arc that's seemingly out of nowhere about wrestling and a former wrestler by the name of Scorpion. And I thought this is one of the coolest things. And that's what's so great about Inoue is that Inoue can just basically write anything. And it really turns out to be rather magical. And this is about his return back to the wrestling ring, even when he's disabled. And I really thought this was one of the most intense arcs that I've ever read. And so I give it a lot of credit. I think it was a bold move by Inoue. And so it sits at my number 10 spot. At number 9 is Kyoto arc in Rurouni Kenshin. And this arc is really, really, really badass. I really love this arc. I think the Sojiro fight is one of the best fights that I've seen. But then to follow it up with an even better fight, with the Shishio fight, that is incredible that you had a back-to-back fight of the caliber like Sojiro and Shishio. To me, this is where Kenshin really kind of peaks, and so I didn't really care for too much of what followed after that, but this is the most memorable arc by far, and if you could stop at this arc, it would be perfect. At number 8, we have the War arc of Vinland Saga. Now, I know the internet's most favorite arc in Vinland Saga is the farming arc. However, let's be for real, guys. The War arc is really where it all starts. When Thorfinn is young and he has these interactions with his father, and then later on, Askeladd, and then later on, Thorkel. I mean, come on, guys. This is really what hooked you in. I really love the battle scenes in this, and it's not just because I love action, but it's also because I love the dynamics of it. The dynamic between Thorkel and Thorfinn is fantastic. The dynamic between Askeladd and Thorfinn is even more fantastic. This is just a masterpiece, and this is really where it all got us all into it. So let's give it credit where credit is due. Okay, sitting in at my number 7 spot, we have the Sano arc by Slam Dunk. This is actually the final basketball match in the manga series, and I never thought that some of the earlier matches could be top, but the Sano arc really does it, and I'm so happy that they made a movie about it because it really deserved its own film. This is one of the most intense basketball matches and sports that I've ever read through in a manga series. I really felt like I was sucked into the game and that I was there and I was rooting for them. And of course, it has my favorite panel. That's the panel where Sakuragi just goes flying into the stands. This match was really where they just sacrificed everything for, and I really loved that. Okay, so coming in at number 6 is going to be a surprise to myself as well as to some of you guys, and that's the farming arc in Vagabond. And the reason why it's a surprise to me is because when I first started reading this arc, I was really annoyed. I mean, if you don't know what Vagabond is, it's about this guy, Musashi, who's trying to be the greatest samurai in the world, right? And so it's action-packed. And then out of nowhere, this character just starts farming, and you cannot believe that this could be the greatest arc in the series. But it is. It is absolutely the greatest arc in the series. That for chapter after chapter after chapter, they're showing this guy who's the greatest samurai. And he has trouble with farming. And it's something that he cannot do. And I mean, that struggle to me is one of the most beautiful things that's ever been captured in a manga series. Coming in at number 5 is a manga series that did not make my top 25 list, and I do feel a lot of guilt for that because it does have one of my all-time favorite arcs, and that's the Soul Society arc in Bleach. Now, the Soul Society arc is really where everything happens, and Bleach could just end right after there, and it would have been a great manga series. The fight between Ichigo and Kenpachi is one of the most legendary fights that we've seen, and Kenpachi as a character really works for me because he is just madness. It's all madness, right? And I love it. I love the fact that they're rescuing Rukia, and they're on this mission. I love the fact that they introduce all the captains and vice captains. I mean, they're some of the coolest characters that I've ever seen in a manga series. Okay, coming in at number 4, we have to have a One Piece arc, and there's so many to choose from, but my favorite is the Marineford arc. I have to say, I've never been so hyped in my life about an arc. I mean, when you see Whitebeard's pirates coming and they're about to attack, this is like a battle of the Titans. This is like the battle of the big boys, right? You get to see the Whitebeard pirates fight against the Navy, and it is freaking awesome. And you get to see just how powerful this legendary pirate crew is, because you always hear about these emperors, but you never get to see how legendary they are. And when the Whitebeard pirates land, you had a lot of big timers going at it. And for that reason, it sits at my number 4 spot. Okay, sitting at my number 3 spot is, in fact, the Chunin exam of Naruto. I mean, there are things that have been done in the battle shonen genre, but I don't think anybody's ever done the exam arc as well as Naruto. I think Rock Lee and Gaara is one of the greatest fights that I've seen. Even the whole thing about Rock Lee and when he takes off the weights on his ankles. I know that that's kind of a tribute to Dragon Ball and a copy of the Dragon Ball when Goku removes all of the weights from his body, but Dragon Ball never did it as good as the Chunin exam. Like, nobody's ever done it as good as this. And then when they introduce Orochimaru, I think that's a landmark moment. The way they introduced him in that forest is really, really, really chilling. And so I loved it. I love the dynamic between Naruto and Sasuke when they first come across Orochimaru. And so, it sits at my number 3 spot. Well deserved. Okay, at my number 2 spot, we have the Chimera Ant arc. Now, this arc in Hunter x Hunter is actually one of the longest setups to an arc that I've ever seen. There's a really, really long setup, and I know that that's going to piss off a lot of you guys, but man, the payoff is totally worth it. I really think the Chimera Ants themselves are really disgusting, and they are just a menacing group of villains. And we finally get to see the legend Netero fight, and it's one of the most legendary fights. I mean, this is incredible, and I always say that these fights are legendary, but it really, really is legendary. And so, if you gave up on the Chimera Ant arc early, I would suggest that you don't. I would suggest that you read it all the way through, because this really is one of the most legendary arcs that you will ever come across. Okay, coming in at number 1 is, of course, the Golden Age arc of Berserk. This is an absolute masterpiece, and this has a very different feel than the rest of the manga. It's a lot about politics. It takes place in this very medieval setting. Kind of has a Game of Thrones type feel, but it is absolutely incredible. The dynamic between Griffin and Guts is really like none other that I've ever read. Just the complexity of it. And you could talk about it for hours and hours and hours. I actually can't talk too much about this manga just because I don't want to give anything away, and there would just be too many spoilers if I was to talk more in depth about it. But this is one you absolutely have to check out. So that concludes my top 10 all-time manga arcs. Please remember to like and subscribe.